Hey YouTube, this is Let's Talk About Yu-Gi-Oh! And today I want to talk about what the Yang Zinc deck profile of mine is going to turn into after Invasion of Venom comes out. So, as far as Invasion of Venom coming out, a couple of minor things are changing, but a couple of cards are being added to the deck that's really going to help, just with overall, I don't know, the deck being amazing, I guess. So, you're going to add, I'm still playing the 2 Volflame. I added 1 Gold Driver. I may put this back down to 1 and add the Silvered instead, just because you can make Denglong with Silvered and Jiaotu. But it seems to be working out for now. 3 Steel Ren, because Steel Ren is, it's your Pendulum Tuner for when you're making Nirvana. 3 Zephyrinnu, because you need to play 3. 1 Tao Tai, Evil of the Yang Zing, just because you can use it in some of your Chao Fang combos. If I didn't need to play him, or didn't see the need to play him, I would cut him out of the deck and put like Zafraxi in there. 3 Suwani, because it specials from the deck in defense position. It's a 1900 beater, and when you sync with it, you gain 500. 3 Bien, because when you sync with it, it becomes battle immune, and you can make Herald of Arclight with this. Arguably more important than Suwani. 2 Bixie, just because it specials an attack position. It has 2k defense, and while immunity from spells is cool, or immunity from traps is cool, it's not that great. You don't make a lot of synchros with it. You just kind of use it to get to your other Yang Zings. 3 Jiaotu, best card in the deck. You don't have to play 3, but again, you're just going to want to. Because if you can normal summon a Jiaotu and activate its effect, if they effect Veiler it, you can still destroy it with a Metal Foe to special another Yang Zing from deck. So that's pretty cool. 2 Pulau, because Pulau is needed in one of your Chao Fang combos. Immunity from spells is pretty cool. A little bit cooler than traps, I think, because level 1's a little bit easier to work with, especially with Chiwen. But same number Pulau. I mean, you just kind of got to play 2 here. 3 Chiwen. 3 just because you're always going to be, if you don't get your main combo off, you're always going to be special summoning a Chiwen from grave, so you can make a Herald of Arclight or Denglong or whatever you need to in that specific situation. Just generally a really, really good card, and having that extra +1, even though it's being banished, is pretty cool. 1 Saravius. So I had somebody say a while back that adding this to your deck just made it become another brick, and that you wouldn't be able to get as many combos off if you had a Saravius in deck. The thing is you're actually adding 1, or you're plus or minus zeroing on cards that brick, because in exchange for Zephyr Divine Strike, you're playing 9 branches. So that used to be a brick, and now it's not, so adding a Saravius doesn't really mess with consistency of the deck. 1 Storm, just because if you really need it, if you're going up against a deck that plays a lot of back row, and you're going first game 1, you don't have time to side, like a Royal Decree or something like that. Storm just completely annihilates your opponent, especially like Cleatomize. Just a really, really good card. Searchable, and can get off your combination and fusion effects. 2 Yang Zing Path. Yang Zing Path, really good card. I sometimes wish I had 3 in the deck, but if I started to play a lot of these cards that I wanted to play 3 of, I'd have to start running Pot of Desires, and you really don't want to play Pot of Desires in this deck. 1 Soul Charge. I used to not play this card. but ever since the interaction between Nirvana and Beatrice became a thing, I've just been, you know, turn one, if nothing else, you end up having two negates, a Monolite Chao Fang, and a 9 branches on field. So, uh, great card, especially later in the game. So, uh, play it at 1, but I'll side it out if I side in any of my searchable side deck cards. 1 Metamorphosis Fusion. There are sometimes, again, I wish I had 2, but you just can't really hurt consistency in this deck. You can still win even if you have 1, but sometimes it's really hard to get off a Baxi effect to put it in grave. So you really just have to maintain that you at least have 1 Baxia in extra deck at pretty much all the time, or you at least have a finite or a definite way of getting a Baxia back in extra deck. 1 Yangzing Creation. You're pendulum summoning a lot in this deck, so I decided to move it down from 2 to 1. Double creation can be really scary, but you know, Yangzing Creation is searchable, so you don't really have to worry about running multiples in order so that you can draw one. It's not an essential part of your combos. It's really just kind of here because it's a discard, and if you brick, you can set it, and you'll probably be able to go off the turn afterward, or at least make a battle immune Herald of Arclight. 2 Combination, because it is the max number of combinations you'll need in order to get your max combo off successfully. So you don't really want to play more than this because it's a brick card. Again, if you're playing like a Demise version of this deck, which I really don't recommend, you could be playing 3, but it might just be getting benched anyway, so I don't see why it matters. 2 9 branches. The only reason I don't play 3 is because it's not a monster, so it can't be used to go off. And the reason I play 2 is because A, it can be ditched, and B, it's not as bricky in the hand as Zephyr Divine Strike, which, I mean, those two are kind of the same point. But nonetheless, it's just a really, really great card, and being able to negate something while popping a Yang Zing is awesome, and it helps you get into your 5 negates combo. As far as the extra deck goes, if you haven't seen my video on Searchable Soul Charge, go watch it, and you'll know why I'm playing Beatrice. Felgrand, because sometimes it's better than number 38, just because you can detach a material and then shuffle it back into the deck with a Yangzing Path or something. Baxia your opponent for 4 times. Baxia your opponent 4 times in 1 turn. Number 38, because it can suck up spells once per turn, and it's just, you can make it with 2 Baxias or just 2 level 8s really, really easily in this deck. 1 Herald Arclight. Macrocosmos, active negate, searches you Seradius. Need I say more? I'm only playing 1 Denglong in this version, just because you can search Yangzing Path so easily by effective Zephyrinu that I don't think you will need to run more than 1. And since you can only special summon 1 per turn, it's probably not that great of an idea if you run any more, just because extra deck space is so incredibly tight. 1 Stardust Charge Warrior. It's a level 6, lets you draw a card, and against the mirror match, until they are smart enough to summon out a Zephyrinu, if you make it with a Swanee, you can just keep attacking into their Yang Zings and wasting their resources. 1 Yazi. Yazi often wins me the game, just because I'll have a Chiwen in graveyard because I made a Yazi, so then I'll pop the Yazi, pop one of their cards, special the Chiwen, special something like a Tao Tai, or in this case you can summon a either a Herald Arclight or a Swanee, make a Denglong, or a Herald, or a BN or a Swanee, make a Denglong or Herald Arclight. So it's just really good. It's also necessary for some of your Chao Fang combos, so that's pretty cool. And it can't be targeted, so it's just generally a good card. 3 Baxia, if it's out or gets limited, this deck will no longer be playable. It's your main playmaker, and it's also your main source of removal. It makes your opponents very, very angry, so try not to play this deck against your friends unless you really, really like being competitive. This card is just absolutely insane. More broken than Denglong, in my personal opinion, just because it lets you keep making synchros, whereas Denglong without Baxia is not that great. One Ignister, it's Ignister. Pretty good removal, especially against pendulums, and just an all-around good card. I was running a Draco Slayer version of this deck at one point, where you would you also play the Draco Slayers just so you could special summon a monster from Ignister's effect in order to get your Ignister effect for free. But it's not really worth it to run the Draco Slayers, especially in this version. One Void Ogre Dragon, just because while it's a little bit harder to keep your hands empty at this point, it's still very doable, and having a spell or trap negation is really, really strong because this deck loses hard to back row, so being able to kind of mitigate that is pretty cool. One Chao Fang, one of your main floodgates in the deck that you actually main deck, making a Dark Light Wind Chao Fang turn 1 against BA is absolutely insane. So yeah, Stardust Warrior. I haven't quite given up on Stardust Warrior yet, just because you can make them with Denglong and Baxia. The summon negation is really, really cool, and it's a 3k beater Gundam. I said that in the last video, but it's just so cool. Nirvana High Paladin. I wasn't playing this before, but once I learned its effect, yeah. Again, if you haven't seen the searchable Soul Charge video, go watch it right now. If you have any reason to play this deck, that is probably the main reason. 2 Archfiend Eccentric in the side. You don't always have Pendulum Scales open to be able to activate Archfiend Eccentric and then pop Archfiend Eccentric so that you can destroy a back row. But just being able to attribute it to destroy a monster has helped me in a lot of games. So generally a pretty good card, but it's also just as easy to play a third Storm. So your choice. Hot Red Dragon Archfiend Abyss. So Hot Red Dragon Archfiend Abyss is really good because it's arguably easier to make than Crystal Wing, and it has just about as good of an effect as Crystal Wing. So while you don't negate two effects, like 2 different effects, you can negate one face-up card. It's not just limited to monsters. So if they activate like a Soul Charge or some crazy card like that, you can just negate it. And then when it does damage, you special summon a tuner from grave. So it's just, you get more value. It's easier to make because you can just make it off of Void Ogre. Good card. Good card. Better than Crystal Wing in my opinion. Although if you're playing the Tolkien version of this deck, I would play Crystal Wing instead of this. Crimson Blader. Summoning this when you're going second and destroying a monster with it basically means you win the game unless you're playing an Xyz deck. But then again, if you're going second and you are able to side this in, then that probably means you know what they're playing, so you probably won't be dumb enough to side this in against Xyz decks. So, I mean, it's a level 8. You make level 8 synchros in this deck. Like, what more could you ask for? Black Rose Dragon, just for clearing fields. Yeah, not much else to say. While Baxia can be good for clearing fields sometimes, sometimes there are just too many cards, and you're just going to want to Black Rose them. Plus, your Yang Zings can get destroyed, which will let you get effects off those Yang Zings and stuff like that. I play 1 Storm, just for when I need the back row removal, although I'm debating on taking it out in favor of Just another card because you can side in Royal Decree against back row decks. One Metamorphosis Fusion. Because sometimes having 2 fusion is really good in long grindy games, especially if you're not playing against a back row deck. You can just side out the Storm for this. One Mistaken Arrest. If your opponent adds cards to hand constantly and you don't really have any other side deck cards against them, this is a relatively cheap card that you can buy for, it may only be $1 or $2, I'm not totally sure. But they can add cards to their hand. And if you're searching it through the Nirvana Beatrice combo and they can't add cards to their hand, I mean, that's pretty much game unless they can get past 2 negates. Or however many you can make if you're not doing the Soul Charge play. Heavy Slump. This card was turned on to me by user Paradox on Reddit. So if you are playing against a deck that plays Max C, you're going to want to side out the Soul Charge and side in Heavy Slump, because if they Max C you, you actually end up in a better position than if they hadn't, just because they're going to draw 15, 16 cards, and then you can Heavy Slump them, and then they only start with 2 cards in their hand. So absolutely busted. Really, really good card, and I guarantee that person will never ever max you again. One Vanities. I'm still debating on whether or not to play this, just because you have, when you're doing your Soul Charge combo, you still have a lot of things that go to graveyard. It's not like you're playing just pendulums, so it's easy for them to like MST it, or if you try to like negate that, unless you have a 38, you won't be able to negate the Vanities being popped, so sometimes it's better to just side deck other cards. A little bit more specific to what your opponent plays. Massacre Restrict for Monarchs and Necros. Imperial Iron Wall for things like Cosmo, although you have to be careful you don't summon Chi-Wen. I'm not quite sure how it's ruled, but I feel like if you summon Chi-Wen by its own effect and then you synchro with it, instead of being removed from play, you just can't synchro with it because it's banished instead. It may go to grave, but I'm not 100% sure. One World Decree. Against Cledemise, this deck just like dies. Like, you cannot do anything against Clifford Demise. So playing Royal Decree is probably your best option. Playing Royal Decree and then making a number 38, because if you don't, you won't be able to negate a Twin Twister or something that they're going to throw your way. Yeah, against any kind of deck that focuses on playing a lot of back row, Royal Decree. Now, because of that, I would side out the Storm and any other back row hate you have. You could still play Soul Charge, but I would just try and keep playing as many Yang Zhang cards as you can. I actually wouldn't side out any of these traps, just because they can be discarded for Jiaotu's effect. Just the Storm instead, because I mean, you're not going to need to be destroying back row, much less your own, if your opponents are locked down anyway. Spells can still hurt you, but again, if you've got a 38 up, you'll be okay. Anti-Spell Fragrance against Pendulums. If you don't have an Anti-Spell Fragrance, Pendulum Hole is pretty much just as good. But if you basically wombo combo them and then have Scales up and then play Anti-Spell, you'll be guaranteeing yourself a Pendulum summon next turn. And if you're able to Pendulum summon, that means you can grab like a Yang Zhang Path, normal summon a Jiaotu, or special summon it by some other way. I guess search a Yang Zhang Path, because you won't be able to play it straight away. But good card if you can afford it. And then One Solemn Warning. If you like to play a little bit more defensively, I would main this instead of Soul Charge, just because Summon negates can sometimes be better than summoning your own monsters. So it really just depends on your playstyle. Other than that, there's not really much to talk about. Thank you very much for watching this deck profile. If you liked it, please leave a like. If you want to see other videos like this, please let me know. And if there's something that you would add or a really good floodgate that you could search out with like the Nirvana Beatrice combo or other cards that would work really good in this deck, let me know in the comments below. And thanks for watching. So I'd usually end the video after that, but I just kind of wanted to talk about something real quick. I've always been really fond of ritual monsters, so something I haven't really tested out yet, but is really possible, is if you played advanced ritual art in this deck. Summoning Saravius is not your main goal, but you can do it. And its summon negation effect is pretty good. Only problem is you'd be playing cards, more cards that would mean you brick more often. So maybe it'd mean dropping things like Soul Charge and Storm, other unnecessary cards. But because you can search so much with Herald of Arclight, it's entirely possible that you could summon a Saravius just by playing Advanced Ritual Art and dumping Volflame to grave. Because if you tribute Herald of Arclight in your opponent's turn, add Saravius to hand, if you still have a Baxion on field, you can just make Herald again, activate an effect of one of your own cards by destroying it or something, tribute it again, add Advanced Ritual Art to hand, and summon a Saravius. It's a second summon negation, and it returns to hand. So you can still negate stuff, and the cards are, I believe, banished. Yeah, when your opponent would special summon a monster, return it to hand, negate the summon if you do banish the monsters. It's a better version of Stardust Warrior that I'm not really sure is easier to get out, but it's pretty cool and it allows you to play it in this deck. So it's kind of some strange synergy, but if you decide to play it and it works in your deck, awesome. Now this is actually the end of the video. Thanks for watching. If you liked, leave a comment. If you want to subscribe, go ahead. I post videos every once in a while. I'm not committed to a schedule right now, but you know, I'll post something when it seems important to post something. Thanks for watching.